Hey guys, Maximus Prime here, back with another Destiny 2 video. This video I'm basically sharing my thoughts and opinions regarding Destiny 2 Edge of Fate. It's been out for a week now, so I'm just going to be covering a few topics and what I'm thinking of the game at the moment and the DLC overall. So the Destiny 2 Edge of Fate DLC has been out for nearly a week now. In 3 hours it's going to be reset. I'm just going to discuss my thoughts. I've been playing it near enough all week. A fair decent amount. I haven't played it every day, hours on end, but I haven't had days off it. I've been playing it every day. I'm just going to share my opinions based on the campaign, what I thought of the raid, the new exotics and the weapons that have came out, and I'm also going to discuss because of the new obviously year of Destiny with the power level grind and basically the gameplay and how it works. Discussing that, I'm going to have a touch on Crucible as well, and then some things that still need work from the DLC and my overall opinion of what I've actually been thinking of it, all of it, and then also explain at the end, if you don't have the DLC, should you get Destiny 2 Edge of Fate? So just to kick off, we're going to talk about the campaign. I've completed it now. I think the storytelling is actually really good. I think one of the top 3 campaigns I think Destiny's actually had. I think it's better than Lightfall's. I don't think it beats Final Shape, but I think that would be difficult to beat just because it would be it's the finale of the Light and Dark saga. But I thought definitely better than Lightfall. I played Beyond Light. I can't remember that as well as Lightfall, but I thought I still thought the current campaign Edge of Fate was fairly decent with storytelling. I thought it was really interesting, some really good characters which I'll touch on in a sec, and I thought the actual missions were pretty good. There's a lot of missions, so there is I think there's 16 in total, and they basically stated that it was like a non-linear campaign, so you can almost pick and choose what missions to do first and last, which is pretty cool, and it kind of did work. Moving on to the actual new characters they introduced. They basically introduced Lodi and Orin. So I think Orin had been touched on previously, obviously in the past, but this is where she's actually putting the game properly with a few, actually getting involved with stuff. And obviously it's the first time we've met and had Lodi involved in the game. Starting off with his character, I thought it was really cool. I thought it was a cool character. I enjoyed the actual development, and he had a big part in the actual story. And it seems like he'll potentially, hopefully, have a part in the future DLCs. It's kind of how it left off the campaign. I thought his character was really cool and everything. I think Orin, I think she should have been involved a bit more. I don't think she was involved as such. I think Lodi had the actual, I think he was the one that was more directed and looked at in the whole thing. I think she kind of sat back a bit more, even though she was in literally the opening cutscenes and everything. But I think she wasn't as involved in much or enticed. But I still thought she was a really cool character, and hopefully see her more. And I thought the Ikora stuff was cool as well. So if you haven't played the campaign, there will be spoilers in this video. But basically, obviously it gives her a backstory and how she became a Guardian and who she was previously actually on Earth before she actually, her forgotten past, and then kind of recalling it, and shows a few cutscenes of how she actually became Ikora, which is pretty cool. So I thought that stuff was really interesting as well. Moving on to the raid, so that came out Saturday, not Friday this year. Overall, it seems really cool. I'll be honest, I didn't complete contest. I didn't have much of an attempt on it. I thought I'm going to leave it. I didn't have the team. I didn't have any proper builds, and I was watching a lot of it, and when I woke up the next morning and saw people still on the final boss, I thought, I wasn't going to lose sleep over the contest mode. I haven't finished it yet. I've had a couple of attempts on a few encounters, but I actually do want to dive in properly and try and do all of it start to finish. So just starting off, it is basically non-linear, so most raids you got first, second, third, and all the encounters throughout until the end. This raid's a bit different. There's 3 encounters, basically 3 mini bosses. You just pick and choose which one you want to do in what order. So, there's a Wyvern, a Hobgoblin, and a Hydra. I've done most of the Hydra stuff. Overall, it does look really interesting, the actual raid aspect. I like how it's non-linear. You get to almost pick and choose it. It makes the raid race different because everyone's at different parts completely. Not everyone's stuck at one part because everyone's began on different encounters, basically. But I thought it was a really interesting raid. I think the bosses look cool. I think the whole aspect and how it visually looks is really cool. I thought the actual mechanics aren't bad at all. And then the actual final raid boss, which is basically a massive harpy, I think that looks sick as well. And the actual how the damage phase works, actually standing on the harpy as well. I thought all of that was really good. I think from what I've heard, everyone said contest mode was tough, but that's expected. But I think it's the most difficult it's actually ever been, really. Especially, I think it comes down to the sheer damage. You have to basically be perfect with no deaths on those damage phases, especially that final stand. I think there's multiple teams who failed multiple times before that was actually finished. But I thought overall, I thought the raid was actually really cool. It was really well done, and you can show it was a difficult raid just due to how long it wasn't necessarily the mechanics that are difficult in it. I think it's people trying to actually get that perfect damage, because I think that's what really held teams back in this raid. So I think that's why the raid race went on for so long for World's First. Moving on to the new weapons and exotics, obviously you got an eyepiece for each class. So obviously you got the Titan with the hammer that you can throw. I don't remember the name of it. You got the Warlock exotic where you can have the Hellion, the solar thing, and then you got obviously a Hunter chest piece where it works and stuff with Strand. I haven't really touched any of them. Obviously there's clips online of all of them. They do seem good, they have their things, but none of them seem overpowered. I've had some people obviously think and say that the Strand one for the Hunter potentially is, but I haven't tried or actually tested any builds of it yet, so I wouldn't know. And then there's realistically 3 exotic weapons. Obviously you got the Raid rocket launcher, which I've seen a couple of things, and it does seem very strong at the moment, just because of how it works in terms of charging up a rocket launcher, basically firing it as a Strand rocket launcher, which is pretty cool. And then the actual 2 exotic weapons, so we've had the 3rd iteration, which was the Void Scout Rifle, almost like a little charge type thing, so your ADS, and the longer your ADS the more damage you do, and then you can go invisible and get true sight. And then the Graviton Spike exotic hand cannon, which is an arc and stasis mix, and you can jump between the 2. We'll start with the Scout Rifle. I think everyone who's played the DLC can agree this weapon is busted at the moment and overpowered for whatever reason. I think it's going to get a big nerf, as soon as possible. I'm surprised they haven't already brought one out. It's been a week since the DLC came out. I've used the Scout Rifle throughout the whole campaign. That's all I used near enough, and it was my damage from my bosses. It was my special weapon. I didn't have to touch my special heavy because of this Scout Rifle. It was very, very good. And I think I would have used it anyway, even if it wasn't half as good, just because when I first saw the clips for it with the Invis and True Sight, I thought it was a really interesting aspect, and I thought I'd use it straight away. And with my Hunter Void build, it worked perfectly. So yeah, the Scout Rifle is great. I think anyone would love using it. I think it will get nerfed though, but I think the actual concept is really cool. Moving on to the Graviton Spike, once again, I think it's a cool exotic. It's an easy quest once you complete the campaign to just go run around Kepler and finish off that. But overall, I thought the Graviton Spike, yeah, it does seem like a good exotic hand cannon. We haven't had one in years. 150. It's good in PvP too. I've tried it in PvP, even though I'm rubbish with hand cannons. It does seem actually decent in Crucible and does work in terms of if you can get that 3-tap with the arc, you can switch over to stasis and you can get the stasis benefits. I believe you can potentially even 2-tap with it at that point. So it does seem like a really cool exotic hand cannon, and I think multiple people will be using it. Just quickly, I'm going to touch on as well the actual destination Kepler. I think it's like they said, one of the biggest destinations. It does feel like a big destination. I thought it was really cool. It's basically split up into 4 quarters. So I think one aspect's got like Vex, and then another aspect you're in like mines underground and stuff. But overall, yeah, you'll explore the whole lot during the campaign over the 16 story missions and touch on every corner of Kepler. But I thought there's a lot of chests and a lot of loot that you can just go around the mission, a lot of secrets, a lot of puzzles. But I did think it was actually, I thought it was a pretty cool destination, one of their better destinations. I think if Neo Muna or I can't remember what came out, Final Shape, but I think their destinations were it's the Pale Heart. But I think especially like the Lightfall campaign, if that destination was the same size as Kepler, it would have been awesome, having a massive city to explore. Obviously it is much smaller, but I think they did a really good job with Kepler. I think it's really interesting, and hopefully in their next DLC they'll open up another big space that we can explore. One thing I forgot to touch on, as good as the campaign was, I'll quickly dive back to it. There is a lot of puzzles. So obviously, I'll bring it up now. You've got the Matter Spark, you've got the Relocator, and you've got Matter Weave, the Strand one, I think. They are all cool. Like, they're all right. They're cool. They get tedious, as expected. No one's going to use them and think they're amazing all the time. They shouldn't have been advertised like they're an ability, because they're not. They're just a mechanic and a little gimmick that they used on Kepler. It was cool at first, and you use it enough, and but you don't use it loads and loads, and it's not like it's going to change anything. But the campaign is very puzzle heavy. Every boss encounter or every time you're fighting some ads and you have to open somewhere, it's always trying to use either the cannon or Matter Spark mainly, or the Strand one, to try and use those almost like a puzzle to get through to the next area and trying to use them all together. Or even if a boss has like an immune phase, to get out of that, you're going to be using those to obviously has like a certain mechanic to get through that. So they were very puzzle heavy, and were using a lot of Matter Spark. Like, they advertised it every single stream, and they were using it every single mission. But overall, I thought it was still pretty cool. I don't think it really affected it much. It's just, it does seem like there's a lot of puzzles in that campaign. I'm going to move over now onto the power level grind and obviously how the gameplay is working, how it's feeling, because it's all different now compared to how it was all different now compared to how it was working prior to Edge of Fate DLC. So the power level grind is tedious and it is long. It's alright. I think it is a long power grind. However, I think with more modifiers and more missions that will come out over time, I think it'll slowly get a bit better. I think a few tweaks need doing to the power level actual thing, especially when it released and everyone was just farming on core and just going straight up to 250, 300 power. But overall, it does seem pretty good. I'm hoping they open the seasonal hub stuff soon so I can start farming tier 3 up to 5 gear, because at the moment I've only got tier 3 boots and tier 4 helmet, and everything else is sat at tier 2, just because it's a nightmare to actually farm at the moment unless you've obviously done like the mythic campaign stuff. So that seems so like I said, it seems good. However, it can, get repetitive at times, doing the same thing over and over just to push your power level. I think there needs to be a bigger aspect. But I think over time, obviously with more missions landing and coming in, I'm aware, I think Reset, they're bringing Onslaught actually into the 5 team ops. I think that'll have a big change on it. It'll be really interesting. I think another thing, you complete these missions, especially some of the missions in the power level grind where you don't actually have a bonus engram or there's a certain legendary weapon that you're trying to get at the end of it. I think that sense of achievement's almost gone. You're finishing a mission and you're getting like maybe one item. Solo ops I understand, but even if you're doing maybe a 5 team ops, you're only getting 1, maybe 2 pieces of gear after a 10-15 minute mission with all these modifiers just to bump your power level a lot. And it's the same weapons over and over. It's a very small weapon pool at the moment of what you can actually get, and I think it needs to be opened up a bit more. Final thing, I might have missed this, and I'm just going to put it out there. I'm going to touch on it later on, but where are the raids and dungeons? We've got loads of raids and loads of old dungeons, which they could have brought in and implemented into a tiered gear system, put some modifiers in it. Why can't I do Deepstone Crypt, with modifiers where there's enemies dropping like flame at the ground, or there's ones which can make all the others invisible, and there's certain things like that, and then put that with the challenges, and then put a difficulty modifier on it, and then make it so the gears half decent, even if it's only tier 2 and 3, unless you run it at like a mythic difficulty. Make it so we can run our old stuff, because everyone loves the raids and dungeons. Why can't we keep running those over and over? I might be wrong and you can, but from what I've gathered, the old raids and dungeons is not much you can actually do with them at the moment, unless they're going to bring them in at a later date. They kind of just sat on the destination screen, they're not on the portal, and they're not being advertised anywhere, and it's kind of that sense of they're just been left in the dust. I'll quickly touch on Crucible as well. Crucible's near enough the same. There are a couple of tweaks, obviously. The weapon, because they've changed the stats and everything, I do like how they've changed stats from your normal ones before up to tier 100, and they can get them 200, and they've changed it to weapons, health, class, etc. So I do really like that aspect. Weapon stat is very good in Crucible at the moment. It's the one that everyone should really be looking at, and then obviously alongside that you're going to want a decent amount of super, at least like 70 to 80 plus. Otherwise you're not going to be getting your super in Crucible for whatever reason, just because of how they've tweaked it all. But I think Crucible's still pretty good at the moment. Well, I say pretty good, it's not. Crucible's a nightmare. As much as I play Crucible, it's probably what I play the most. I was still slamming my head on the desk, because it's just Destiny Crucible. We've got to take it with a big pinch of salt. But yeah, I think overall it hasn't changed much. It does seem fairly the same. There's less pulse rifles being used, which is a bonus, but there's a bit of everything. And I have got on my notes here as well that I'm reading. The only other thing I said is to fix health regen. Bungie, can I just ask why you have ruined health regen for all classes? I can't understand it. I don't get it. Why do I have to get over 100 health to be able to start regening health quicker? And that's not just Crucible, that's PvE, that is everything. If I get into a gunfight and they headshot me twice with a 140 at a weird angle and I'm low, I'm basically one shot at that point. I'm waiting 10 seconds nearly before I'm back to full health, and I can't change that without running over 100 health stat, and that's just frustrating. I understand you got this orb stuff, but how often can I start dropping orbs of power constantly in Crucible and benefiting from it? I can't really, so it's just a pain. PvE, it's a bit more obviously understanding, because you can use stuff like Devour, you can get your orbs of power regularly and keep just farming off those to get your health back, but even still, Crucible does play a big effect on you. I don't think it's actually noticed. I think that kind of needs to be tweaked, but that's just my opinion. Just a few improvements now. I've made a note of a few. I think I've touched on a lot of them already. The first one, I will say, the bugs. There are too many bugs and issues with this since Edge of Fate has dropped. I don't understand. There are ones in Crucible, there's ones that I've just found out happened today with certain weapons. There's ones that were happening when the DLC first came out, and there was a big 10 gigabyte update that Destiny did, and I think the only thing it's mainly fixed for us Xbox users at least is the crashing on the console. But there's still multiple bugs that I'm seeing day to day that haven't been tweaked. It's frustrating. I think if Bungie knew these bugs were a thing when it was first released, as rubbish as it sounds, just push the DLC back 2 weeks. If you pushed it back to the end of July, you could fix all these bugs, have it absolutely polished, and you're fine. If you didn't know them until you put them on the consoles and actually release the DLC, I can understand. But there are a lot of bugs in it at the moment, and there still are. And I'm expecting them to be worked on, hopefully at least polish it. But even just little things, and they have issues. I think Crucible's got a nightmare one where your character's sprinting, but you're not sprinting, you're only walking. And until you die, even then. And I don't know how it comes about or how you can get rid of it. It's just a pain. I think if people play Crucible, they've probably seen that already. It's a pain in the ass. And then I think there's just loads of other ones, but that's one thing. Like I said before, raids and dungeons, they should have been added with modifiers. They feel useless now. I don't get why we can't run in and go and put a few modifiers on a dungeon. I can run Pit of Heresy and get whatever weapon at tier 2 or something, even something as little as that. If you can upgrade your power level in it, I haven't gone into one, so you might be able to, I might be wrong. If you can boost your power level in it, I understand a bit more it's worth doing dungeons and raids. But I know you want to put a lot of this stuff in the past, but it is content that people have paid for and people enjoy. What makes Destiny is the raids and dungeons, and they've kind of just been, just thrown under the ground and thrown under the bus, and no one's actually playing them or doing them, I don't think, other than the new one, of course. And why they haven't just done the old raids and implement it into how the new one works with your tier system, something that they could have easily done. One thing I've put here as well, as I've said, need to make more content more entertaining and less repetitive, but I've put I don't know how. I think modifiers are cool, but overall it does get repetitive running the same missions day in, day out to get certain loot, to try and find this certain power grind, and it just does get repetitive and it gets less entertaining, even if you run it with people, unless you're focused and you just want to grind power level. If you want to jump in, do a few missions and leave, you do that day in, day out, and it's the same missions, it's just the same cycle. I think that's why, like I said, I think Dungeons and Raids should have been implemented. I think a lot more old content should have been brought back. I'm hoping they do it over the weeks. I don't know if they are. If they do, that would be great. So we'll just have to wait and see what they do with that. And then the last thing I've said is fix health regen again. Just put it so it's just not so slow, or tweak health so even with 70, 80 health, I can still regen my health quicker, because it just doesn't have a Crucible. Finally then, should you get the DLC, obviously Edge of Fate DLC if you haven't already got it. If you're wanting a good campaign and you do raids and you're interested in trying the raid and you want to try some of the new gear and the new exotics, then yeah, I definitely highly recommend getting Edge of Fate. In that aspect, it is really good. The new destination's good, and you will go back regularly. There's actual new little mission that comes in every few hours that you can do on Kepler with 2 other people, and that lasts half an hour. I think it's called the Sieve or something. That's cool as well. And can get gear. The campaign's cool and it's done well. The mechanics in terms of the puzzle stuff, it depends if you like all that stuff, because the only time you ever use it is in the campaign or exploring Kepler. And then the raid I think's good, and the new gear, it's a few new weapons and a couple of armour sets, so you can try all that in terms of the actual Edge of Fate stuff, and you probably enjoy it. So yeah, if you want the DLC for Edge of Fate, I'd recommend you getting that. If you're coming back to play Destiny overall for the actual playing the game and boosting your power level, it's your personal opinion at that point. It does get repetitive and it does need work in places, and I think with time it will improve. Hopefully, especially when they release Renegades in December, we'll notice a change in the actual playing content on repeat, because that's ultimately what Destiny is. It just feels like there needs to be, I don't know what it can be, but something that can make it less repetitive and almost just make it bigger sense of achievement running certain missions and make things more difficult, because I'm sat at 240ish power and I'm running a 200 power mission because that's the highest level I can actually do them with a couple modifiers, and it still feels extremely easy, and it just feels there's no sense of achievement. I'm just speed running these missions and it's just nothing actual difficult in general. But other than that, I think other than a few improvements I've suggested that could be done to help things, I think overall the DLC is pretty good. I think Bungie have done a good job with it overall. I just think a few things need tweaking, which will happen slow time, and hopefully it'll put it on the right tracks. I think it's a good release for the new Fate Saga, but I think it does still need work overall. But that's just my opinion, obviously, for the DLC. Just sharing my thoughts on it overall. Now it's been out for a week, and yeah, if you enjoy the video, obviously leaving a like would be much appreciated. If this is the first video of mine you've ever seen on the channel, you know, I do release regular Destiny 2 content and plan to release much more with Edge of Fate here. So, you know, subscribe would be much appreciated, just so you can stay up to date with any of my future videos. And I'll see you guys in the next one.